So we have about 56 billion animals on the planet that are slaughtered annually. They consume about 80% of the world's soybean crop and about 50% of the world's corn crop. It's quite astounding when you look at it that way. Livestock's production contribution to greenhouse gases is greater than the transportation sector. That's quite amazing as well, in that we usually think of driving and flying when we think of reducing our own emissions, or alternatives to driving and flying, like bikes and so forth. So why is this the case? I just want to go back to the food chain that's feeding the animals. First, of course, fossil fuel inputs are used in the growing of the feed. So that means we're turning natural gas into synthetic fertilizer. It's a very energy-intensive process. We burn gas to do that. Modern pesticides, very similar thing. Also, we transport that grain using fossil fuels to feed the animals, since we have a disconnect now between concentrated animal feedlot operations and the feeding systems. And the third, though, is the most important, and that is whenever an organism eats food, it gets energy from that and also turns it into body mass. But during that conversion, you lose about 90% of the energy in that food. Yeah, it's rough. So as Howard was saying, we have a situation in which it takes about 16 pounds of grain in order to make 1 pound of meat. In addition to that, of course, we've highlighted the methane contribution. That is, livestock contribute a great deal to other greenhouse gases, not just carbon dioxide. Animal agriculture is responsible for 37% of all anthropogenic methane emissions and about 65% of all nitrous oxides emissions. That's animal agriculture alone. And of course, we have a great deal of energy going into heating and cooling concentrated animal feedlot operations, and we also have a vast amount of energy that it takes to keep the meat cold once you slaughter it and move it to the consumer. All of that is very energy intensive and therefore emits greenhouse gases. So in the scientific community now, people are embracing what's called life cycle analyses to look at all of the various inputs and the impacts that they have when you take something from the farm all the way to having it at your fork. So when you do that and you look at a kilogram of beef, the equivalent of 36 kilograms of carbon dioxide are emitted for that. If we look at pork, it's about 6 kilograms, so it's 6 times more efficient. But if we look at dry peas or beans, it's about 0.6. So we look at that another way. Dry beans, peas, adequate source of protein per kilogram are about 60 times more efficient in terms of greenhouse gas emissions than a kilogram of beef. Quite striking. So basically, plant-based diets are far more sustainable than diets based on grain-fed meat. Reducing our consumption of industrial-produced meat will greatly reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases.